Oh, we're sitting?
No, you're standing and talking,
okay.
and I'm sitting, and then I'll stand.
All right. Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Alan Eagle. Jonathan and I, along with our colleague Eric Schmidt, co-wrote the book $1 Trillion Coach. We're going to try a bit of an experiment today on our time we have with you today. We're going to talk a little bit about the book and some of the things that we learned from Coach Bill. But then we're going to try to split you guys up into groups and do a little bit of a workshop to apply some of the principles in the book. So we're going to need it's going to be a little hard. We've got a big group here to split up into smaller groups, but we're going to need your cooperation. It's going to be a bit of an experiment, and hopefully it'll work out pretty well. Let me tell you a little bit, though, about the book and how it came to be. The book is called $1 Trillion Coach. A little over 3 years ago, unfortunately, Bill Campbell passed away. And at that time, Eric and Jonathan and I had worked together for many years at Google, and we wrote a book previously called How Google Works. And around that time, we started to talk about how can we honor Bill and codify some of the great things he did. And we thought, well, let's write a book. So we set out on this project, and we interviewed over 80 people who had worked with and known Bill over the years. And through that process, we actually learned something new. We all knew Bill was an executive coach in the last phase of his career here in Silicon Valley. And executive coaching, the meaning of executive coaching tends to be one-on-one. Like if I'm Jonathan's executive coach, we meet and we talk. But Bill wasn't that. Bill was a coach of teams. Now that makes a lot of sense coming from a football coaching background. In fact, you guys probably know his bio, but Bill grew up in Pennsylvania, went to Columbia, played football at Columbia, and then became a football coach for the first 12 years of his career. First at Boston College and then as head coach at Columbia. That's pretty unusual in the business world. We did a little research. We tried to find someone who had coached at a high level like Bill had and then achieved a high level of success in business. We couldn't find anybody. Although it makes a lot of sense because over those 12 years, he was a coach of teams, of course. Then he went into business. He came out to Silicon Valley. He did very well at Apple. He went to Claris. He was the CEO of a startup called Go, and then he ended up as CEO of Intuit. That's phase 2 of his career. And then he went into coaching, or he went back to coaching, this time executive coaching. He was on the board at Apple, and he helped Steve Jobs rebuild Apple. And he joined Google, and he helped Eric and Jonathan build Google. So in phase 3 of his career, he went back to coaching as a business coach. But this was the thesis that emerged, is that he was a coach of teams. So what do I mean by that? Well, one thing that surprised me, I'm working on this book with Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google, and Jonathan, employee 100-something and a senior vice president, and I'm just kind of a middle manager sort of guy. And I sort of had this idea that the higher level you go in a company, people have achieved great wealth, great success, great power. They're going to be a little more easygoing, right? No, completely wrong. They get more petty. It's more about ego and ambition. It's actually, they need a team coach even more. And that was one thing that emerged, was that in Bill and his work at Google, probably in his work at Apple and at other companies, he was working with the senior leadership team to keep them working as a team and not go off in individual directions. So that's like the core thesis of the book. Business is a team sport. To be successful as a team, you need a coach. But the best coach for the team, most companies can't go out and find a Bill Campbell. The best coach of the team is usually the manager of the team. So the principles that we captured in the book are all about Bill's coaching principles, business coaching principles. They're pretty simple, but they're pretty hard to do. So I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan to tell you a little bit more about some of those principles, and then we're going to come back and get into our workshop session.
Okay, thank you, Alan. So the most important thing that I learned from Bill is how we learn. We learn through narrative. We learn through people telling stories. So how many of you had a football coach who played football? Okay. How many of you had a football coach who played football and would teach you by telling you what he did when he played football? Okay, like all of you, right? That's how coaches coach. Well, I wasn't a football player. I was a business person. And I learned business from Bill. And I want to give you 3 quick stories that I learned from Bill that I think will illustrate 3 of the principles in the book. And then what we're going to do is we're going to break into groups, and we're actually going to have you guys apply the principles that are in the book. So the three principles are: only coach the coachable, You can't do anything without a team, and you need to focus on first principles. So let me tell you about only coaching the coachable. I had been a senior vice president for Excite at Home, a few miles north of here, 1996 to 2000, and Google had been trying to hire me for a few years, and I'd refused them. They were just this little company in Mountain View that wasn't going anywhere. And Eric Schmidt started and really wanted to hire me and called me, and I went over and did some interviewing, and then I went over for the last interview, presumably to get the job offer because, I fancied myself a big shot and they'd wanted to hire me before, so obviously they've interviewed me again, they want to hire me again. And I go over to pick up the offer, and Eric has a plan. He sits me down in a room. I'm at the end of this big conference room. I'm all by myself. I'm sitting down. I'm waiting for Eric to come in with the offer. We're going to negotiate. He's a geeky engineer. I'm going to out-negotiate him. And instead, something else happens. Eric doesn't come in. Somebody else comes in. You can pretend I'm in that chair over there. Rosenberg, I've asked around the valley about you. They say you're a smart guy and you work hard. Don't give a shit. Are you coachable? So I said, depends on the quality of the coach. And he hits me. And he's like, smart Alex are not coachable.
You want to hit me?
Yeah. Smart Alex are not coachable. And he lumbers out of the room. He goes into the micro kitchen. And I'm like, what just happened? And then I realized Eric Schmidt has a management coach. He's this old guy. He's buddies with Steve Jobs. That was that Bill Campbell guy. And my job offer is in the micro kitchen. So I go running out to the micro kitchen, obsequiously. Mr. Campbell, sir, please, let's try that again. Please. He's sitting there fiddling with his tea. Rosenberg, back in the room, butt in chair. I sit in the room, and I just sit there. Nothing happens. He's making me wait. Finally, he comes back in, and he just starts lecturing. We don't need arrogance here. We need humility. Business is a team sport. We don't want people who put themselves before the team. We don't want smart Alex. And he just goes on and on and on. And it goes for 20 minutes, half an hour. And then finally he comes back, and he's like, Rosenberg, I do have another question for you. If I were to be your coach, what would you want to get out of it? And I'm like, I don't need a coach. I'm a smart aleck. He's right. But I need an answer. So I'd actually watched one of these football shows about the Dallas Cowboys, and they interviewed Tom Landry. And Tom Landry said, a coach is someone who sees the things you can't see, hears the things you don't want to hear, and helps you become the person you always wanted to be. How's that, Bill? And he was like, Rosenberg, you're so full of shit. But I think I can coach you anyway, so we'll give it a shot. That was my first exposure to Bill, and I then spent the next 10 years meeting with him once a week, going through the dynamics of our team. The second story is, after about a year, I was ready to quit, which would have been a tragically stupid thing because we had cliff vesting of our stock at Google, and I was ready to quit after 10 months, and the cliff is only after a year, so I would have left with nothing. And I was ready to quit because I was failing to hire people. And the reason I was failing to hire people was I was doing what lots of people like me do. I was trying to hire people more like me, people who went to business school and has business degrees. And Larry Page didn't like any of those people. Larry wanted computer scientists. So 10 months in, and I haven't built a team. And Marissa Mayer, who worked for me and was later the CEO of Yahoo, came in, and she went to Stanford. She was a computer scientist. She came in and she said, well, it's time for my coaching session with Bill. Jonathan, you need to leave. Of course, she worked for me, which was a little bit odd. But in any case, she was like, Bill, why is Jonathan so upset? And he said, well, he's not hiring anyone. Larry's rejecting all the people he wants to hire. He can't build a team. And Marissa says, well, that's because Larry doesn't like people like you, Jonathan. He likes people like me. Of course, I was ready to kill her. Bill stood in between us and made sure that didn't happen. And then he looked at me and he said, "You don't have any ideas that seem to be working. She's got an idea. Let's listen to it." Her idea, of course, was to hire people right out of school with degrees in computer science. She called it the Associate Product Manager Program. And we went and got the most talented people in the world with degrees in computer science. And what she said was, "Jonathan, you'll never learn computer science. It's too hard for you. But you understand business. You can teach the business people computer science, and then they'll all grow and become great managers in the company." And that's what happened. The third quick story.
Business.
What's that?
The computer science people business.
The computer science people business, correct. So,
See, those business people are not so smart.
So the third quick story. One day we were in a room debating the launch of Google Instant. And for those of you that don't know, that was sort of the internal name for going from you type what you're searching for into Google and you hit enter, and then the search results come, as opposed to the way things work now, which is you type into the search box, it starts disambiguating your query, trying to figure out what it is that you want, and filling the results that you're actually interested in all at the same time. Half the team didn't want to do this because we were worried about ad revenue. You're less likely to see ads if you're very quickly taking people to where they want to go. And the room was divided, and everyone was arguing. And Bill says, well, let's go back to first principles. What's the basic cultural value of the company? And everybody's like, well, it's all up on the walls here. It says, do right by the user. And Bill says, what would the user want? And that settled the argument. So in our principle of know what your first principles are, know what those things are that they have up on the wall. You have them in a football locker room. You have them in a business. You know, he has his it's the people principles, support, trust, respect. You actually have to live those principles and look to those principles when you're trying to make a decision about what to do with a particular business issue. So those are three stories related to three of the principles. What we're going to do now is we're going to try to divide you up, and we're going to give you some assignments related to these principles. And it's not going to be easy, so you're going to just need to follow orders. We're going to try to get half of you, and I'm going to take the half in the top of the room. So I'm going to come and sort of, if you're clearly more than halfway back, just move to the back of the room now. So you can start going. Go. I'll keep talking. About halfway through, just go all the way, filling the back of the room. Okay? Alan's going to take the front half of the room, and once we're in our halves, we're going to divide into 5 groups. And I don't want you to waste time with captains. So I don't know. Maybe I see some women in the room. There are 10 women. Every football team needs women, so the women are going to be the captains if I have some women in the room. So maybe if I can have 5 of the women back there and 5 of the women up here, then it'll go faster. So I'm going to leave the front half of the room to Alan, and I'm going to come to the back half of the room. And we're going to get this done in less than a half an hour.
Half hour.
So you're clearly in the front of the room, so you get to stay here.
Okay, guys, if you're in the front, try to come forward a little bit.
Okay? This is the end of the front of the room. You're in the front of the room. You guys are all in the back of the room. And you're a captain.
Just try to come in. It's okay to sit down. Just try to come a little. Or actually, yeah, come on up. We'll huddle up.
Okay. So if I can keep, yeah, this will work. Okay.
All right, so guys,
where am I?
Am I still on mic?
Do I actually do I have 5 women? Then I know who my captains are. It'll be great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, here are my 5. I have my 5 captains. That's going to be perfect. Wow, I got lucky.
that was great. Everybody really was engaged and involved. We really appreciate that. In case you guys didn't know what we did, up front here, my group was the football group. You guys were a losing football team. Jonathan's team in the back was the losing business, the failing business. Same set of principles, different scenarios. One was football, one was business. And this is really an experiment just to see what sort of tactics you came up with for football versus what you came up with for business. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of the principles, and we're going to start with football and have the coach talk about
who is
what they came up with. So,
who is Alan's
and then we'll
coach
go to the business.
number
Okay,
1?
First principle, your title makes you a manager, your people makes you a leader. Who is our football coach?
Your business, your football.
Oh, you're in football. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So we had 5. Our first one was show your team members you love and appreciate them as an individual. Our second one was be a coach that takes responsibility for the team's failures, so be humble. Our third was have an open door, be approachable, and listen to your team. Our fourth was identify leaders of the team, get their ideas on how to turn the team around, and motivate other individuals on the team, so giving them responsibility for their success and empowering them. Our fifth one was point out the things on your team that are going well, so focus on those instead of looking at the bad things, and build on them. Don't focus too much on the negativity.
Okay, and my business person for the same question.
We took 3 of our top 3 choices out of our group and came up with integrated team management, leadership for a day to empower everyone, an open and honest forum with the CEO, similar to the open door policy, and rotational leadership, allowing everyone an opportunity to be a leader.
Okay, some good similarities in there, sorry.
All right, let's go to 5 words on a whiteboard. Who was Alan's coach there?
I had 5 words on a whiteboard.
Did I skip one?
Yeah, no, that's
That's the next
the next one, yeah.
Okay,
5
5 words on a whiteboard.
For football.
Alan's person.
Yeah, for football. Okay, so we ran through a lot of them. We had like 7 of them, but I'll put it down to 3 for you guys. So one of the biggest things for 5 words on a whiteboard was the first thing we wanted to start with and have it a general kind of thing for every one-on-one is to always speak about positivity. I mean, we've been on bad teams and we've known that some of the worst things that can happen is when you're on a bad team, you're losing, and the first thing that goes is a negative culture, so we want to keep it positive. The second is going into that meeting or a one-on-one, having a structure, having things from both sides, the coach and the teammate, so you can have sets of things that you want to talk about to see if you're on the same page or if you're a little off. Let's see. The third is you want to create a structure where there's a summary and you can have deliverables and an action plan so that you know that the person leading the one-on-one can have follow through and that you're actually following through with what you want to do.
Okay, and my
We really liked the buffer time and hearing about that today as one of our choices, as well as CEO doing day-to-day with lower-level employees, kind of like an undercover boss to check in with everyone. And then the evaluation of a leader and a CEO being open to hearing criticism from employees and what they could do better.
okay.
So a lot about transparency, more positivity coming through on the football side, but not so much on the business side. Okay, the next one is best idea, not consensus. Who was the football captain working on that? Okay.
Him the mic.
So for this one, I think a big idea that we talked about a lot was similar to a business, a football team's got a lot of different moving parts, and maybe the best idea for one part isn't the best for the team as a whole or other parts. So instead of having like one leader or 2 or 3 that decide everything for the team, having a decision leader for each position group separately, those meeting and discussing ideas, and then choosing the best one from that instead of just having one idea and everybody kind of nodding their head.
Anything else?
Let's see. Yeah, so we get a council with each group and then make sure that the core principles of the team are what all the ideas tie back into.
Who was my business person for the same one?
That was number 5, best idea, not consensus.
So we talked about 4 different things. So kind of having a leadership board where everyone has the opportunity to share. And then the CEO or the person in charge is actually the last one to speak. So other ideas aren't influenced by the CEO or the leader. And then the second was a physical idea board. So whether that be a whiteboard or something in the office where ideas can be generated. The third one was having some kind of third-party influence, so whether it's someone within the company who's not necessarily related to the business idea or concept coming in to kind of reevaluate things, or someone from outside the business, whether it's a psychologist or someone coming in to do some evaluation. And then the fourth is having some kind of evaluation or measuring process for ideas, so whether it's a physical rubric that you're using to make those ideas, or whether it's kind of those first principles that you're using to make sure your ideas are consistent.
Okay. And is the next one number 6? Okay, so we're going to have to go quicker, but who had lead based on first principles for Alan? Go ahead. Give us yours quickly.
This is lead based on first principles.
Yeah, so first, if you don't have a set of principles, that's obviously the first step is to get some assigned. Second would be to kind of like I talked about earlier, separate into each groups and then get measurable goals per group that tie into those principles. So maybe like work hard, accountability, those are more team principles. Get position group goals that tie into those that you can measure and hold everybody accountable doing those things.
Okay, and my side?
So we talked about the goals as well, but making sure they're simple, consistent, and then broadly applicable to a lot of different areas. Because a lot of times they can be just difficult to digest, so making sure that they're actually simple and applicable. Having a physical checklist, so again, kind of like a rubric, making sure that all ideas are consistent with those simple first principles, and then something like a 90-day evaluation period where you're constantly reevaluating.
All right, ding, ding, ding. Largely the similar, right? You know, figure out what you're measuring, measure it, have a checklist, very similar. What's the next one?
Okay, so our next principle is manage the aberrant genius.
Okay, Alan.
Who's the football
coach?
Yeah, so I think a big one was like I didn't know what the word aberrant meant. So you got to actually define when does aberrant behavior actually cross sort of the core team values. So that was a big one. And then I think we also want to make sure that that person feels like they're empowered and sort of in the driver's seat and ask them, how do you want to better plug into the culture of the team? And then I think we actually had one other, Jack, if you want to.
Yeah, it's just a lot about open and honest communication, right? If your apparent genius is outside the lines, you got to tell them what's up.
Woohoo. Okay, and my side? Yeah.
We said first to diagnose, to find out what makes that person tick, what they're trying to accomplish. Second, to find out, are they coachable? Are they looking to be part of the team? Next, it would be to offer potential mentoring and potentially sandboxing that person, limiting where their sphere of influence is. And then finally, a mitigation strategy such as, not taking them one-on-one to the side, putting them as part of the team to try to evaluate and potentially let them go.
Okay, but again, largely similar. You guys started from the foundation of knowing the definition of the word aberrant, but it was still largely about diagnosing and then figuring out, coming up with an action plan, being direct and telling the folks what to do.
But it's also not just definition of the word aberrant, but what constitutes aberrant
Where's the
for
line?
that culture?
Yeah,
Where is the
which
line?
is the same.
Much more important.
Okay. Evangelists for Courage on Alan's, on the football side? Yeah.
Hi. Okay, so for evangelists, we have mentorship. Creating mentorship programs would be one of the key ones that we had. So, where we had senior level players coaching more youth or start players. So from there, then we also have making sure that we're challenging people. So putting people in positions so that they will learn, and that's actually a preface to our next one, being using learn instead of fail. So actually changing the way that we talk about failure so that people are more comfortable with making challenging decisions and challenging themselves.
Okay, and my side? On that same question?
Thank you. So we ended up being able to push each employee outside of their comfort zone. Also encouraging your employees, not sugarcoating things, but being consistent, not overly doing it, but being tactful about it. Also understanding to sacrifice the battle for the war to win the war. So knowing, what battles to pick, and then redefining failure, making sure that everyone understands that it's okay to fail as long as you get yourself back up, and identifying the issues to get better in that failure.
Okay. This is one of the things companies have the hardest time with is failing. So I love this, failing equals learning and redefining failure. That's great. Yeah.
Okay. What was the next one? Your next one? Have you
build an
done yours?
build an envelope of
Did
trust.
we do that? No.
You got mixed up. Your order
Oh,
got
I
mixed
got my
up.
order mixed up when I grabbed things back. That's okay. Did we do that one?
Let's do build an envelope of trust. Let's start with football.
Yeah, so when it comes to building an envelope of trust, it's about open and honest communication. So the first thing that we recommended was just getting an overarching view of the trust within the team. So within a football team, you have to trust everyone on the offensive and defensive end, as well as your coaches. So just getting a little bit of information about where the team is at in terms of trust. But most importantly, it's about open and honest communication from the players to the coaches to the players, and players to the players. Keeping your teammates accountable and honest and giving them honest praise and also honest feedback when they're doing bad things is super important when it comes to building an envelope of trust.
Okay, and on my side, same one?
Ours sound almost exactly like that. So top level transparency down from the CEO down, particularly like a State of the Union, what's failed, what hasn't, what's worked, what we've tried, what hasn't. Leadership taking ownership of things that had not worked. We thought that was critical. Again, this is a failing organization, and trust is kind of faulty. Establishing personal level interactions from top down with department heads, individuals, and showing that those individuals actually have a backstop that the top level leadership will support. And then particularly overcoming fear in the organization by establishing good communication lines and really just building the personal individual interactions.
So what we've tried and what hasn't, and where the trust was broken, we're sort of central across both of these. Then the next one, it's okay to love. The football love, okay?
So I think we also talked about mentorship in the older guys, just like accepting and letting in the new guys and know what's going on. Then they also talked about 5 minutes at the end of each meeting to discuss what's going on outside of football. So you're building up a personal relationship. So you're starting to get to know each other like outside of football, but know each other personally on a personal level and not just as an athlete.
Okay, and on my side?
Okay, Bill was all about family, so we are taking our team on a family hornblower cruise, is our first one. Second, we're going to have a celebration of Life Day where everybody brings in their baby picture, puts it up, and celebrates that we all started the same way and get to know each other a little bit better. And the third is we're going to do a workout during the day, like recess, for everybody to do some team building and just have some fun.
Get to know each other, do things together, and build that esprit de corps, camaraderie, and relationship dynamic.
Okay.
Two more, and we're almost done.
Two more. We're almost there. Team first. Football.
So team first, we have, I guess one of our goals would be the will to power to dominate whatever lies before us. And our actionable steps would be, we have a weekly recognition, like having a group meeting where we can recognize someone who's done exceptionally well that week, and being able to open up that platform of praise. And then we also have investing in our teammates and creating an open platform to allow people to express their lives. So our actionable steps towards that would be paintballing and movies. So in that way we can do some more like team building. And I think that was, just make sure. And team evaluation meetings. So evaluation meetings so that we can make the necessary changes so that we can be more efficient in
Okay.
what we're doing. Yeah.
The other one?
So to go fast, you want to go by yourself. To go far, you want to go as a team. And to keep the team first, you have to clarify your goals. A lot of times you don't know what the goals are, and sometimes when the ship is sinking, you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page as far as the goals. Also confirm execution, making sure that not only do we have goals, but we need to make sure that we are confirming that the goals are together and being executed the right way, and making sure that we're all in sync. The next thing is team team bonding exercises, community service, going out, hanging out with each other. And then the other part of it is we were successful at some point. So you have to reiterate the team successes. However, you do have to talk about what has gotten us into this position, and then being able to pick yourself up. So reiterating the wins that comes along with some of the losses.
Okay. And the last one, always build community on the football side.
So my group said that we should discover success factors for the team. So kind of creating that community within the team by making goals and setting like an idea of culture for the team and kind of reassessing those every like periodic, like every kind of month or so. We also said implementing a mentorship program, but not just with the older and younger kids on the team, but also with the coaching staff, just so those kids that are coming onto the team know that they can talk to those coaches and be open with them. And then also creating a team-based activities or like competitions, and then kind of extending that out to the community to kind of create that community within the team, but also giving back to the community that they are surrounding and kind of making sure that they're being proud of them.
Okay, and business?
Okay, we're going to give each employee $50 a month to go out with a team and discuss a, what? I want a high five. Discuss one of the company values and build some team. We're going to do a job switching day where people take somebody else's job for the day to develop some empathy and break down silos. And we're going to start our meetings, as Bill always did, with something personal or a fun fact about yourself.
Getting to know each other. So I'll close pretty quick. Did you?
Oh, first of all, let's give a big round of applause for the captains.
Okay, so if you listen carefully, you heard things that were different, but what you also heard was principles that are largely the same. And the principles are all about leadership and showing that you're a leader, and showing that you manage by tight practices, building trust across people, running things as a team, building community, and establishing positive camaraderie and esprit de corps. And largely, although some of the actions were different, giving away $50, the objectives were still all the same. Getting people to work together better, getting people to know each other better. Whether you're in business or whether you're in sports, those principles related to teamwork are the same. And I think one of the things that has come up quite a bit on the book tour was, will there ever be another Bill Campbell? And I think the answer to that, sadly, is no. I don't think there will be somebody who has kind of the gravitas, the intellect, the emotional intelligence, and the ability to do the kind of management of teams at the very highest level across companies that are competing like Apple and Google that Bill had. But what I think we've learned going through this book is that companies do need coaches of teams, and every manager can be a better coach. Every manager has one side of his or her job, which is performance against the job, relationships with other people, achieving the objectives that the company wants, delivering against those objectives, and pushing people to do the specific things that the company's demanding. And most managers just focus on those things. But I think what's different about all of you, people who played football, people who have worked with different coaches, in life you kind of become the sum of the people who have coached you and the managers who've worked for you. And what's different about you in the business world is you have this background with football, and you have this relationship with Bill through visiting conferences like this, through the books, through the slide decks that we're providing. That means that you guys can all be both managers and be coaches. And I think the world and people in business need more people who can work with the people who work for them, who can see the things they don't want to see, hear the things they don't want to hear, and help them be better people. And I think if all of you do that out in the world, Bill would be particularly proud of what we've all accomplished here and what all of you are accomplishing. So we ran a little late, but thank you, and I think Mark and the gang have lunch waiting for you outside.
Thank you, guys.